Good evening, everybody. I will call to order the Marin Water Board meeting of July 16, 2024. Terry, if we could have roll call, please.
Good evening, Director Larry Russell,
Here.
Director Monty Schmidt,
Here.
Director Jed Smith,
Here.
Vice President Matt Sampson,
Here.
and President Ranjiv Kush.
Here. I'll ask if anyone has questions on today's agenda, and if not, do we have a motion to adopt today's meeting agenda?
So moved. Second.
And Terry, do we have any public comments on the agenda?
Not on the agenda.
Then could we have a roll call vote, please?
Director Russell,
Aye.
Director Schmidt,
Aye.
Director Smith,
Aye.
Vice President Sampson,
Aye.
President Kush.
Aye.
Thank you.
Next item is public comments on items that are not on the agenda.
Yes, we have three. Mr. Phil Sauter, then Charles Ballinger.
Good evening. I got my water bill last week, and once again, I'm impressed by the enclosed on the waterfront insert. It's a clean layout with 4 clear messages. As always, my favorite item is a consumer story on reduction of outdoor use of potable water. The before and after pictures and results make the message clear. And I'm grateful that these personal examples of conserving potable water outdoors are becoming more frequent in customer mailers and on the district's website. On the bill itself, I noticed one anomaly. There's a sample bill that shows the customer's monthly use compared with that of other users in the area. In the example provided, the customer's use was lower than average for the area. And in particular, the customer's use in the summer months stayed fairly level, while the average area use rose substantially. In one simple graphic, the customer could see that she was conserving outdoor potable water better than her neighbors were. Conversely, a customer whose summer water use was higher than average for the area would get a clear insight that his outdoor use of potable water might be excessive. I turned the bill over to see how my water use compared with other users in my area, and the information in the graphic weren't there. I don't know if this is an omission on just my bill or just my area, or perhaps it's been discontinued district-wide. If so, I'd like to suggest that the area comparison data and graphic be returned to all bills on a regular basis. As we increase our efforts to educate customers, encourage them to use less potable water outdoors, and ultimately to flatten the summer curve, it would be very useful to show them how far along they are in that process. Thank you.
Thank you. After Mr. Ballinger is 1402.
Hello, Chuck Ballinger from Strawberry. I just had a quick comment on the support of the Phoenix Lake pipeline. I wonder if today's environmental constraints 100 years ago, if we had them today, we probably would only have one reservoir in Marin. It might look like a desert, but the fish would be very happy. These days, unfortunately, if a horny frog wants to start a family anywhere near the Public Works project, the project stops. Look at the Bon Air project, the bridge. Just the environmental planning took 4 years, the same amount of time it took to build the Golden Gate Bridge. And then it took over 4 years to actually build the Bon Air Bridge because it might distract a few spawning fish. Look, I'm all for the environment. I've supported Greenpeace, Save the Whales from shark finning, etc. But I think we have to keep things in perspective here. I just don't think we can let a few fish obscure our view of the big picture. If a major storm strikes Marin when Phoenix Lake is full, the spillover could flood Ross Valley. If there are any fish in the creek, they'd be surfing down Sir Francis Drake Boulevard. The pipeline project will make this flood retention basin much more effective. It will also increase our water supply. With 191,000 paying customers as your constituents, please don't let a few fish and their saviors stand in the way of what needs to be done. Thank you very much.
Thank you. 1402, then Marilyn Price, please.
James Holmes, Larkspur. I'm very concerned that the Phoenix Bontempi transfer project was not on the agenda. My understanding, wrong perhaps, but I understood that it was going to be considered on the July 16th agenda. There seems to be some further delay. Even more concerning, I didn't see this project scheduled on the item 10 list of agenda items on upcoming meetings. Consistent with what the prior speaker said, I'm very concerned about the continuing delay with this project. And if a project this simple and straightforward and uncomplicated is delayed and complicated by fish advocates, then I cringe to think what they will do when the larger necessary storage projects are proposed. Please remember that when the interests of fish conflict with the interests of customers, your duty is to give higher priority to the interest of the customers. Please put the Bontempi Phoenix project on the agenda and get it going. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Miss Marilyn Price and then Paul Duder.
Yeah, well, I am actually going to pick up on what Bill was saying about the outreach to encourage conservation among the people that are part of MMWD and Get the Water. I've mentioned this before just a little bit, but I get the information from PG&E, as I'm sure you all do, and it comes like lots, several a week. They're promoting solar, they're promoting energy saving, they're promoting induction cooktops. They have what Phil was mentioning, they have the this comparison. I get it in the mail, I get it online. I do see where we rate in terms of the most efficient homes and other homes. I wonder if I think your communication team is doing a great job. I really do. I know we've had good results so far, but I just feel if we put more effort into it, we could get so much better results. And I'm wondering if you want to contact PG&E, see what, find out exactly what they're doing and how effective it is. That's the most important, because you can put the messages out there, but if it's not working, as you all know, we're wasting our time. So I just keep encouraging you to look more, spend more on conservation. With it, I think we can stay within our limit and be very successful without and get people to save a lot more water. Thank you.
Thank you. Paul Duder, then Steve Isaacs, please. Go ahead, Mr. Duder.
Hi, I would like to speak in favor of the Phoenix Lake Bontempi connection project. I think that we desperately need more water supply, and this project is a good first step. There are always pros and cons to any project, and I feel the advantages outweigh the disadvantages. I think that we have raised water rates, and I believe the ratepayers expect the district to show tangible results in terms of increasing supply rather than merely conducting more studies. The biggest advantage of this project, in my opinion, is one that is not really talked about very much, which is flood mitigation. During the atmospheric river in 2021, when Phoenix Lake was empty, it went from being completely empty to spilling in 2 days. And it shows how much water actually will go through that, through Ross Creek and that conduit. So imagine what would have happened if the lake was not empty at that time. Anyhow, this pipeline and this pump and the pumping station will be a big advantage if we ever have a catastrophic flood like that, which is inevitable. So I think that we should go forward and think about the importance of flood mitigation with respect to this project. Thanks.
Thank you. Mr. Steve Isaacs, then Ed Jamison. Go ahead, Mr. Isaacs.
Thank you. In the spirit of brevity is beauty, I'm a fly fisherman and passionate about fish and preserving our environment. However, it's time to vote and approve the pipeline project for Phoenix Lake. It will add water to our supply and improve flood control. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Jamison?
Yes, on Phoenix Bontempi, the costs have doubled from $5 million to $10 million over the past year, and the truly trivial potential yield seems to have been reduced. The board needs to assure that this project is justified on an updated acre-foot basis. Fiscal responsibility requires this. Thank you.
Thank you. There are no further speakers.
Thank you, everybody, for your inputs. I think, we'll be coming back to a lot of these topics through this meeting and the subsequent ones. And we'll move on now to directors and general managers announcements. I'm actually going to ask Ben to start because I think you have a topic, Ben, that's relevant to the discussion.
President Cush, I do have one comment tonight. It follows some of the comments we just heard from the public in regards to the Phoenix Bontempi project not being on the agenda tonight. I did want to share that staff has found issues that warrant further investigation before proceeding. And I believe it's in the district's best interest to fully vet these before moving forward. Staff is also working diligently on the Nicasio spillway modification, which is now in the design environmental review, moving forward very quickly, targeting an 18-month, which is a very aggressive date to get this built through the process. And this project is far more substantial in terms of water supply for the district, almost 10 times the Phoenix project, using similar staff resources. And I want to let the board know and the public that we're fully engaged on both of these projects, and we'll be providing updates to the board and public as the work continues. And, I do understand the interest in seeing progress, and staff is working very hard. It's also important, that we want to be smart about the process and do things right, and to accomplish our goal of water supply enhancement and reliability. And I just want to kind of reinforce what we've been talking about for months, actually the last couple of years, of the focused effort on water supply resiliency from conservation to supply projects, big and small. And we're working in parallel on all of them, in my opinion, a very aggressive way. So anyway, we'll be continuing to update the board on these projects as we move forward.
Thanks, Ben. I think we all certainly look forward to more information as soon as possible on the Phoenix Bontempi connection. But I'll go now to director's announcements. Monty, start with you.
Well, I want to just speak to the comments that we are having here and what Ben just mentioned, and just say that I as one board member, and I think my thoughts on the importance of water supply security in this project are probably shared, which is that we are making as much progress as we can, as fast as we can, to increase our water supply resiliency. We take that extremely seriously. That is what the board has worked toward for many years now. And at the same time, we have an environment that is part of our landscape that we value and is precious to us, and it's important to our water supply. It is not a zero-sum game of fish versus water supply. It's about making sure that we do things correctly. If we jump ahead of environmental issues that are valid, it'll just catch up to us at a later point in time. And this is seen time and again with water supply projects throughout the state. So taking the time now to resolve these issues will speed things up in the long run and get us the benefits that we want. So I appreciate staff's being patient and working with issues as they come up. And we are dedicated and committed to moving this project forward and other projects, as Ben mentioned, that will provide us real meaningful benefits. So my appreciation to staff and to the community too, who really care about this as an issue. And we appreciate that. And we hope that they understand that we are doing the right thing by taking the time necessary and getting it right. And that's the best way to get this project done.
Thanks, Monty. Larry?
None.
Jed?
Yeah, I had the opportunity to connect with some of our local leaders at MCL and others who have had concerns about the Corte Madera Creek impact from the Bontempi Phoenix project that we're looking at. I want to thank the staff, Ben, Sean, and your team for reaching out to our community like I asked and other people on the board asked. From what I have heard from folks, they were supportive, they were listened to, and my issue was not one about fish versus supply. It was more just about process, inclusion, transparency. I think you guys did an outstanding job. I'm supportive of the project, and I hope we get it back onto the table soon.
Thanks, Jed. Matt?
Yeah, thanks, Ranjiv. I'd like to go ahead and just reinforce Jed's comments about appreciation for staff taking the time to circle back around with the interested groups in the community and really taking time to listen. I know speaking with some of their leadership, they're very appreciative of those efforts. So I'd like to go ahead and commend staff and Ben for your role to do that. But looking at this project, I really hope we can use this as a learning experience. Because it's not our big project, but at the same time, it was one that was 18 months down a planning phase. And 18 months into an issue, now we're going to hit pause, and I'm not sure how that's going to affect the outcome of this project. I'm hoping it doesn't delay it too long, but the potential there now is based on our construction timelines, et cetera. So I'm hoping that we can take a deeper dive into the process of going through from planning all the way to where we are at to make sure we don't make these same mistakes again on any of these additional projects. So if we could use this as a learning opportunity, be appreciative. Secondly, I'd just like to go ahead and give kudos to staff and all the planning efforts that went around the water stations at the Marin County Fair. I was out there with the family. It was extremely hot. And those water stations were critical all around, and appreciate the partnership with North Marin, but also a shout out to the staff that actually was there working in the tent, providing educational opportunities on how to use less water in your home out there in the heat. Very friendly, very welcoming, and very informative. So please pass along a thank you to them. And that's it, Ranji.
Great. Thanks, Matt. I have one item. I think some of us know that Marin Water has been providing financial management services for the North Bay Watershed Association. I think this is since the association's founding, so it goes back for some time, and it is a substantial activity that includes treasurer and controller responsibilities. Now the Central Marin Sanitation Agency has agreed to take over those financial management activities, and the North Bay Water Association Board will hold a special meeting tomorrow to ratify the contract with CMSA. Larry, you and I are, you're the board member, I'm the alternate, so I can make this meeting. It's at 9:30. You'll be there? Okay, then I may pass then. But yeah, so that's my announcement. And I think with that, our next agenda item is board committee reports. We are separating those out, and Terry, you'll be proud of me. I did my homework, and I know that we did not have any committee meetings since our last board meeting. So I'm not going to fumble that one, at least today. And we'll move on directly to our consent calendar, which includes 3 items that are documented in today's staff report. The first is approval of the minutes from our last board meeting on July 2nd. The second item is approval of our general manager's report for June 2024. And the last item is approval of a resolution authorizing award of contract number 2033 for the Francisco Boulevard East 2024 anode well replacement project to Far West Corrosion Control Company in the amount of $102,515. Before opening this up for public comment, I just want to note something in the general manager's report, which struck at least me, which are the capital improvement items that are ongoing. I'm just going to run through these quickly because it's impressive. Pine Mountain tank replacement, Redwood Drive pipeline replacement, Wolfpack Ridge Tanks Rehabilitation Project, Sir Francis Drake Pipeline Replacement Project, Granada Drive Pipeline Replacement Project, Lagunitas Creek Coho Habitat Enhancement Project, Tiburon Pipeline Replacement Project, and the last one, the 2024 Anode Replacement Project. It's essential capital improvements that we can only take on when we have the adequate financial resources to do so. So I think it's just worth reminding ourselves how important it is to both have the revenues that allow us to ensure the integrity of our water supply and the staff capacities. Looking at Alex back there, I'm sure he feels like we don't have enough, but those staff capacities to make sure that this essential work gets done. So it's impressive. And with that, I'll open it up for public comments on the consent calendar.
On the consent calendar, there are none.
Okay, then do we have a motion to approve our consent calendar?
So moved.
Second.
Could we have a roll call vote, please, Terry?
Director Russell,
Aye.
Director Schmidt,
Aye.
Director Smith,
Aye.
Vice President Sampson,
Aye.
President Kush.
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll move to our regular agenda. We're beginning with item 9A, which is our 2024 Water Efficiency Master Plan. Welcome, Carrie.
Thank you. Let me pull up the presentation here. And then I'll jump right in. All right. Good evening, board. Carrie Pollard, Water Efficiency Manager. So we'll start with an overview. We're going to talk about the outcomes of the development of the Water Efficiency Master Plan. We'll look at the water savings projections. We'll talk about the strategic initiatives. There's 3 major strategic initiatives to achieve those water savings. And then we'll look at all of our other programs as well, kind of the other incentive programs, which include education and support programs. We'll dive into some of our pilot programs, the policies that are under evaluation, school education, collaborations with key partners, and then all of this kind of rolls up to how will this master plan, implementation of this master plan actually impact water use within our community, and what do those projections look like in gallons per capita per day numbers. So the outcomes. So this is a 5-year plan to identify strategies of, what are the best opportunities for us to reduce water use within our community, right? What can we employ to achieve these savings? And also recognizing that this plan, while it is a kind of a guidebook, we don't want to use roadmap again, we got plenty of roadmaps, a guidebook, it also may not be inclusive of all opportunities that we may find that we will be implementing to reduce water use within the community. In addition, we may stop some programs that we find ineffective, right? And so that may not be outlined in the plan, but we'll adaptively manage our water efficiency program as we move forward, regardless of what's actually written in the plan, so to speak. So we wanted to have an engaging, easy to read plan. Hopefully everyone's taken a look at it. It does have some detailed dependencies with the policy details, the water saving modeling, all of that good stuff. And then finally, we just wanted to mention that with all of the work around the district's strategic plan and the goal of reliable water supply, objective number 1 does directly relate to implementation of the Water Efficiency Master Plan with reducing district water use. So to start the conversation, I want to start with some of the motivators to achieve water savings. And the district did a survey to its customers about 1 year ago, just July of 2023. And there were 3 key findings around motivations. The first one is quite obvious, right? If there's a drought or protecting water supply, if there's a call to action, we're going to get folks to engage. And we saw this when we saw the spike in participation during the drought. The other 2 bullets, reducing water use and valuing efficiency, are going to be really key as we move forward, right? That we want to leverage that folks think that saving water is important and that they highly value that as a motivation. And this motivation is going to be key to helping our customers and motivating our customers to take action to meet the water supply projections that are embedded in the plan. And so when we consider the interest to our customers and we consider the motivations, we can make some projections of what level of participation we might see in some of our programs. And what I started with here is kind of a high level look at what types of, what are the projections and savings year over year if we were to implement all of the projects outlined in the water efficiency master plan. And I have subsequent slides on what each of those projects are, but I kind of want to start at this high level. And what this shows here is the blue is the passive savings, the blue bars. The red are the active savings that we would actually achieve from implementation of the plan. And the green bars, the cumulative savings. So when we talk about the 4,000 acre feet in 2045, you can see the cumulative and passive savings listed there. Excuse me, you can see the active and passive savings listed there at about 4,000 acre feet, but the cumulative savings total about 28,000 acre feet in 2045. And as we move on to the next slide, we're going to take a deeper dive into those active savings. There are 3 key initiatives to achieve the active savings within the master plan. It's our large landscape customer initiative, our district-wide AMI implementation, and our turf conversion program. And so let's take a look at each one of those individually. So we know outdoor water use efficiency is going to be our key. We're going to keep Terry busy moving the stuff all around for us here in the room. We know that that outdoor water use is our biggest opportunity. That's really going to continue to be our focus. And it's also going to be not only just turf overall, but focus on non-functional turf as well. You can see the key assumptions here. We're assuming 190,000 square feet each year. During the drought, we had about 410. And prior to the drought, we did have a turf conversion program, and we only saw about 7,000 square feet replaced. So very, very small kind of participation levels there. We have our savings and the savings assumption source, which is North Marin Water District study from 2019. We have the years of useful life at 23 years, and then the district costs as well. All of that rolled together gives us an average annual program savings. So this is the layout I use for each slide. Okay, so when you look at each one of these programs, it's going to have all the same information updated for each of those programs. The average annual savings, I'll just touch on. It's that prior slide, all the years through 2045, divided by the savings from that specific program. So average annual program savings. When we think about 190,000 square feet a year, it's a heavy lift. It's a reach. We did about 100,000, just under 100,000 last year. So it's going to be an increase from what we've been seeing over the last year, but still short of what we saw during the drought, which makes sense, right? It goes back to those motivators, right? We need to be realistic, but aspirational, and that's what our intent is here. The second key initiative is our AMI program, our AMI leak letters. So it's really twofold, and apologies if the color didn't really come through there, but on the left, we have our current AMI implementation program, right? So that is our 5,500 AMI meters we have in the district. We mail out about 1,200 letters every year to customers that have active leaks. We have a savings assumption that's based on actual leaks that have stopped after they received a letter. So we mailed a letter, we tracked it, we saw when the leak stops, and we've been doing this for the last 3 years. And the average savings is 28,000 gallons per letter. And so that's specific to us. There's a 2 years useful life savings, and you can see the district cost. When we look at full AMI deployment, there's not a direct correlation to, 5 times the meters. There's no 5 times the letters. That's because we hope to leverage the technology that AMI will provide to us to do automatic notifications to where we're not mailing, less snail mail, a few still, right? There's some people, that's the only way to reach them, but really leveraging the technology to the greatest extent possible to notify customers immediately and not have to wait for those letters to go out. The savings are the same, but you can see the unit savings are the same, but the annual savings is significantly increased. I think it's also important to recognize that there are additional benefits to AMI just beyond just leak letters, right? It's giving customers access to their own data, right? So then we're not doing the comparison to your neighbors like PG&E does. You can do your own comparison. You can look at yourself and say, well, how am I comparing? What additional data can we put in that portal that really kind of engages our customers? It's a significant opportunity that we don't want to overlook, although it's not quantifiable. Right? The third program is our large landscape customer initiative. And so this is establishing water budgets for our dedicated irrigation meter program or dedicated irrigation meter customers. What this means is taking landscape measurements, looking at the weather data, and actually sending them notifications of a comparison of this is how much water you are using, and this is how much water your site actually needs. So it's educational notifications, right? In hopes to motivate their landscapers or whoever their property manager is to irrigate more efficiently. The savings here are significant. It's more than an acre foot per site per year. So if we can actually, that's why you can see a lot of savings there. We anticipate having all of our dedicated irrigation meter customers in the program within 5 years. And so you can see the projected units there. So this is why this is kind of a significant opportunity for us.
Hey, can you remind us what a dedicated irrigation customer is?
Yeah, so those are your large landscape. Those are your schools, your parks, customers who have 2 meters on site, one for indoor use, one and then the other is specific for outdoor use. It's a designation of our customer class.
And could you also just explain the 1-year useful life of the savings?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a good question. That's because it requires management and ongoing management. Sending a letter once to say, hey, you're on track with your water budget doesn't mean that next year, if you do the same exact thing, you're not going to have any broken sprinkler heads. You're not going to have the weather change where you need to further adjust your irrigation schedule. So it requires that ongoing education to maintain those savings. So it's a 1-year useful life.
And your previous assumptions about 2 years is like that same thing, that you're going to have to go back to the same customer potentially.
Exactly. Yes.
But don't you, I mean, I can imagine some things are, there is something that will live beyond the original notice, but it's sort of the second follow-up might be not necessarily yield as much, but it's continuing to achieve the same outcome.
Right. So like if you think of a leak, right, just because you have one leak and you fix it doesn't mean you're never going to have another leak, right? And so I think that's a good example. So those are the 3 key initiatives to achieve the majority of the water savings within the master plan. However, there are 8 other that are included in the plan. And so I'm going to kind of hop through those. Again, it's the same layout. If you have any questions, jump in and ask as I go through them. We're going to start with our Flume home water monitor. So we have about 2,800 incentivized devices, but only 16, almost 1,700 active. We recognize this. We're working with Flume. They know the reason why they're no longer active, right? Is it Wi-Fi? Is it battery? Is it just been disconnected? And so we are also working with them to send out postcards, but they're doing their follow-up as well, right? And so we're hoping to get that back up to closer to the incentivized amount. The other piece I'd call out here is that as AMI gets implemented, we're projecting that Flume kind of be decreased, right? We don't want to have a redundant, 2 portals and all of that. We really want to focus on driving our customers to our AMI portal, whatever it may be, right? Once we get there. Pool covers are also included. We're projecting 90 a year. It seems like a heavy lift, actually. Every time I see that, I wonder, well,
Hey, Carrie, quick comment.
Sure.
Just personal experience with Flume. I installed it, had some success. It stopped working, called different contractors, had Flume on the phone. In the end, the timing of when AMI was implemented for me, it was seamless and has been ever since, and there was no need for Flumes for me anyway. So yeah, I think there's a lot of different ways that Flume can go sideways a little bit. I appreciate the technology and the value of it, but I personally found it a little bit more difficult to implement and keep up and going.
That's good feedback. Fortunately, you have AMI as an option, right? So pool covers, so 90 is a projection per year. Does seem like a heavy lift, although we do know who has pools, right? We have a list from the county, so we can work with our comms team to do some direct marketing and really try and get those folks engaged and aware of the program offerings that we've developed for them. Our smart irrigation controllers, we have an assumption of 100 units per year. This is one where we're seeing more traction than we had anticipated. In the general manager's report, I believe reported 236 last fiscal year. So that is exceeding our goals, which helps make up for some of the areas we're seeing less participation, which is nice. The savings here, we use a Flume index to help us understand and appreciate what the smart irrigation controller savings might be. There's a range from different studies. You can see the 10-year useful life from an irrigation controller. We see some irrigation controllers that are still a little tick marks. They're probably 25 years old. But with it moving towards a more kind of tech-based irrigation controller, we think 10 years is more reasonable. Our laundry to landscape gray water kits, we're assuming 40 per year. This savings here are based on our clothes washer flow rates, or the amount of water that a clothes washer is currently using. this is one of those programs similar to Rainwater that I'll touch on in just a moment, that really kind of helps drive people to other programs as well, right? They may be initially interested in gray water and then, end up doing turf conversion. So it's, it helps our program in that way. Rain barrels, our projected units is 15,000 gallons per year. We're seeing a lot of traction recently with our DIY barrel giveaway. We have our fourth one scheduled for this Thursday. We're going to be up to about 10,000 gallons distributed at that point, just from these EO free barrels that they've donated. And so, again, this is something that wasn't in the master plan, this DIY barrel giveaway, but it's kind of helping us move the marker on our program. And so we wanted to take advantage of that. And so in addition to the assumptions we have within the master plan, we have this other kind of side opportunity as well that we're leveraging. Low flow hardware. So again, I wanted to include all of our programs that provide water savings per the master plan. And so we distribute fixture hardware. There's a consultant out there who thinks there's about 14,000 gallons per year savings as an opportunity for us. We thought that was just too high. And so this is an example of where we've made some adjustments, right? We've been distributing low flow shower heads, faucet aerators, and hose and nozzles for almost a decade. People know they can come and get them when theirs get, grimy and old and no longer flowing. And so we keep doing it. However, we adjusted the savings as we deemed fit for the program that we had developed. Our CAP program. So there's really kind of two CAP programs. One is our single family residential program, which is listed there on the left. We were anticipating 400 site visits a year. We hit just under that mark at 399. One more, we couldn't quite squeeze one in. So we think that the 400 is a realistic number for our program moving forward. One thing about the water savings that I do want to touch on is that for water utilities that don't have the extensive array of rebates that we have, they may count more savings towards their CAP program. For us, we want to count it towards the widget more so, and just recognize the CAP program is an educational opportunity to help our customers understand what are all the offers that we have available to them. And so the water savings have been slightly reduced there for the CAP program, recognizing they'll likely participate in a turf replacement or smart control or what have you. We also have caps for other customers, not just single family residential customers. We're projecting about 100 per year is our goal. And the savings life is listed there. And so this is more of just a reminder that it's not just for single family customers. If you're a business or you have a school site you want audited or some assistance on, folks can call us and we're more than happy to go out and help them. So now moving on to some of our pilot programs. So one is our residential water budget program. So very similar to what I just mentioned with the dedicated irrigation meters, it's site specific. We would develop these water budgets, taking measured irrigated areas and local weather data, and then send notifications to customers, letting them know this is how much water you should be using based on our measurements and how much water you are actually using. So similar to the comments we heard about what PG&E does, but this would be specific to yourself, right? So site specific. As a pilot, we're estimating 28 units or 28 sites per year. And this is really to help us refine the methodology, right? Is it using census data for number of people per household? Do we create a tool where people can actually go in kind of similar to our estimator and they can say, these are how many people live in my house and this is where my water use, right? So what are the options to help us refine the data so that it's meaningful to the customer and we're not making so many assumptions that it's somewhat useless, right? We really want to drive home the savings opportunity. So the savings for this program are very limited, but it's again tied to a very limited number of customers that would be participating. Once we evaluate the savings and we look at, determining the appropriate methodology, we can come back to the board and say, we're going to expand this pilot program to something more meaningful and exactly what it'll look like. So kind of more to come on this, but it's something that we want to kind of get moving on as well. The other pilot program in the master plan is our large landscape efficiency improvements for our municipal customers. So this is a program to help sports fields become more efficient, right? So kind of taking our current existing rebates, whether it's turf conversion, non-functional turf, conversion, the smart controllers, et cetera, our custom rebate, and packaging it for folks that may not be engaged in the offerings that we have, right? So our local cities, our school districts, the community improvement districts, like those kind of folks that like Strawberry Community District, for example, right? So packaging this and marketing it to them in a way that's more meaningful to hopefully get them to engage and see what kind of financial help we can provide to get some savings. This is just one example of kind of how we're looking at packaging programs to engage our customers in a more meaningful way. So we hear these key outreach strategies from Adrian over and over again during our comms meeting and other meetings. So I'm just going to touch on the high points here. We want to continue to develop compelling narratives to align with those community motivators, right? We know what those 3 key motivators are. We also want to continue outreach to our existing channels, but recognize there might be new opportunities. And I have on the next slide, I'll speak to one of those new opportunities. We've heard tonight already about highlighting success stories. We can actually see an increase in participation, say if there's a customer success story on Flume or turf conversion, we see increased participation going to the website, which is great, right? It helps convey to us that it's actually working. We want to tailor our advertising to appeal to more specific customer audiences. So this is kind of like, instead of just looking at those 3 general motivators, what other motivators might there be when we look at different subsections of the community? And finally, using the data we have available, of course, water use data, right? So that we can develop more targeted campaigns. And one example of this is how we targeted our high water users. So we looked at our 3 key strategies for targeting these high water users. We did a postcard mailer, we did digital ads, and we did PSAs. And you can see when the digital ads ran the spike, right? So this is leveraging new technology, just recognizing, right? A postcard is somewhat old school. It may have worked for 20 years and we tried it, but we saw that digital messaging really hit the mark. And so, that's kind of where we can lean a little bit more to engage these customers. We also, in doing this targeted outreach, recognize that we don't want to just tell them about one program. We want to package a menu of programs that might make sense for them as we do this outreach. So the efficiency calculator, the turf conversion, controllers, Flume, et cetera, right? And so as we develop these targeted outreach for different demographics, we'll go through this same process. Which programs make the most sense? How can we market to them efficiently and effectively? And we will rely on our communications team to do all that heavy lifting and understand what will be the best way to go about that. Moving on to policies. So there are some local policies that are discussed in the Water Efficiency Master Plan. There's some that are considered under evaluation, if you would. They're the hot water recirculation, retrofit on resale, limiting turf areas, and then also this water efficient home certification program. So what we'd be doing here is looking at, who else has these types of programs? Are they effective? What do they think they would change if they could change them? Are there quantifiable water savings? So kind of what does this package look like? And then we would bring these back to the board if they kind of are vetted and we decide we want to move forward on them. There's 2 current policies that are up for being updated, that have been presented for being updated. One is the fixture standards, and the other, which is just to align with other state codes. The others are gray water code revision. And so I have a separate slide on the gray water code revision because staff has taken another look at this, and I wanted to take a moment and walk the board through it, but then also get an opportunity to get some feedback. So you may recall through discussions around the gray water ordinance, we recognize that the current gray water ordinance is not effective. And so 3 options were developed to expand the gray water ordinance compliance. It was gray water is one, rainwater is another, or low water use landscaping as the third. After discussions with the board, there was a determination or a desire to have the 3 options align more closely with the water savings. So there was parity between the 3. It would be very difficult to get a large enough rainwater cisterns in there that would make sense as far as turf savings, right? So that one was kind of taken out, that option. So then we're left with gray water and low water use landscaping. We know gray water is not effective. And so staff took a step back and said, what makes sense? So what we have here is a updated proposal for a revision. It would be to rescind the gray water requirement, but keep the gray water incentive. And in turn, instead, incorporate a new connection, new connection meaning new construction requirement to limit turf installations. So it would take out the significant remodel requirement. So remodels would be set aside. They would not be held to this. And we have some examples, kind of have some bookends here, starting with having no turf allowed. And this is Southern Nevada Water Authority does this in Las Vegas, right? They don't allow any turf to be installed. One step away from that would be limiting turf areas. North Marin Water District does this. They've been doing it since 2002 when they started with 800 square feet as their limit. Now they allow up to 600 square feet of turf grass. Another option would be to limit turf grass by 1% of the landscape area being installed. So it would be Santa Barbara and Santa Monica both do 20%. Tucson, of course, Desert Community is at 5%. A third option is a combination of the two. So Aurora, Colorado says either 500 square feet or 45%, the lesser of the two. Washington County has a similar requirement, but different percentages and different limitations. All of this, the other end of the bookend is the state. So the state is already limiting landscape installations for new construction and remodels. Anyone who pulls a permit, not significant remodels, any kind of remodel, as long as a permit's pulled, to 25% of the landscape area. And so this proposal would be not have any additional requirements beyond the state for remodels, but for new connections, having a more stringent limitation on how much turf would be installed. And so I can pause here for clarifying questions, or we can talk about it at the end, whatever is the will of the chair.
Do board members have comments, questions on this particular point? I mean, I'll start with one, Carrie's just kind of, you're still seeking information to finalize the resolution that we would then approve on this item?
Correct. This is an informational item, and this is an opportunity to give staff additional direction on what you all would like to see come back for changing this code.
Okay, so Larry, do you want to start?
Well, I have a little broader question first. You don't have any dates on these. Are they all at the same time?
So it's an excellent question. So if we were to do the new connection, we would probably push it to January 1st, recognizing that we'll need to let all of the cities know. And because when folks come to us to let us know about their plans, we need to get ahead of it enough to give them some time. And so I'm anticipating January 1 if this was to go forward.
Across the board?
January 1 for the changes to the gray water, changes to this new connection requirement. We could rescind the gray water and it could be immediate. I believe Molly would correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it could be immediate. And then the new connection would come into play on January 1.
Thank you.
Monty.
This is great. Thank you. I don't know how we would, I guess I would, to some degree, I would ask you, and maybe that's the punchline's coming, is, these different options of what Santa Barbara has done, Aurora. I mean, these are examples. I'm not sure how I would come down on a recommendation. So your thoughts at some point on this presentation would be helpful.
So the more specifics on what staff is proposing.
Yeah, what makes sense here? I mean, we are not Santa Barbara or Santa Monica, and what's comparable, what's wise. Our plot, I think a lot of when I started looking at the math of like percent landscaped area or a certain maximum, I try to think of what that looks like here in our communities. So you've, I'm sure, chewed on this more than I have, and so I'd be curious what your thoughts are.
Do you want to take that now, Carrie, or do you want let Matt and Jed weigh in?
We'll let Matt, Jed.
Matt?
Thanks, Rajiv, and Carrie, thanks for the additional look at this, because I think it's starting to make a lot more sense for our customers. One quick question is the California state limit of 25% of landscaped areas for remodels. Can you explain again what that would do? So say someone has an existing yard right now, they pull a permit for a remodel. How does that impact their existing yard?
So if the landscape changes are included in the permit that they've pulled, they'll be held to the 25% limitation. If in their permit through their permitting jurisdiction, they don't include their landscape as part of the project, nothing in their landscape would need to be changed.
Okay, gotcha. So that's very helpful. So it'd have to be some component of the landscape when the permit's pulled to do so. Okay, great, thank you. And then the other one, the new construction, I think is a good opportunity, and it's more for a later discussion. But you know, we're looking at now these landscapes going in a Mediterranean climate that really should look to be sustainable, not only for water use, but I think we're also going to see it on the wildfire resiliency piece. And I think we have an opportunity here to look at both of those in terms of an ordinance, and it might be even worth a discussion with Marin Wildfire to see if we could come together on some sort of standard that would solve for both of those issues as we look to make a more sustainable future here in our county.
Thanks, Matt. Jed?
Yeah, I think my only comment, Carrie, I appreciate this. And like Monty said, I'd love to really get your strong recommendation here. But given the fact that the gray water requirement does not pay for itself compared to the other incentives, and the fact that turf conversion is been proven to be one of the most important things we can do, I'm not sure why we would retain a gray water incentive rather than increasingly focus on turf with new constructions. So I'd be curious about why you think gray water is that much of an on-ramp when it really doesn't pay for itself comparatively. So that's my only feedback.
Do you want to touch on those two items? So one, why maintain the gray water incentives, and other, just how are you thinking specifically around our turf restrictions?
So I'll touch on the gray water incentives first. In a prior presentation, I had a slide where we talked about our webinars on gray water and how many people signed up for the webinar. I think we had 700 folks sign up. And then of those 700, I think we had 40% that pursued other programs. And I can pull the details on that again. So I feel like it's a good entryway. It doesn't cost the district a lot as far as offering the gray water incentives, meaning it's not a lot of staff time. But it does, people who are interested in it tend to end up going another direction, which is okay, because we're still achieving water savings. But it was the gray water that really kind of brought them to the table. And I think that it's important to retain that opportunity because there is the interest. So there's that first one. And then as far as a solid.
If I could just add to that, gray water systems are not cost effective relative to other initiatives the district's looking at. Keeping it in the incentives, if the board chose to do that, is allowing a consumer who may make the calculus that it's not about money for that person to proceed with the gray water installation, understanding the cost burden that they'd be assuming, in addition to what Carrie's talked about as a gateway to our other programs. So, I think there is a reasonable argument to maintain gray water in the incentives, of course, moving it from this mandated, which we're talking about, new development and significant remodels. I guess while I'm talking, I did want to share partially, I'll let Carrie really dig into it, but I do think there's an opportunity perhaps to think about distinguishing new development from major remodels in how stringent we go, in that new development is by definition new development, new customers to the district. So it's an opportunity perhaps to set a lower standard and perhaps have an approach with a lesser impact for existing customers that are doing remodels that could feel a significant burden. I'm not saying we wouldn't want to have something there, but they don't have to be the same.
Great. Carrie?
I mean, the smart Carrie would say we should think about this as staff and come back with a solid recommendation. So I think maybe I'll stop there. I do just want to note though that the new service connections, that the size and the numbers are listed on the slide as well. And there is a range of lot size, right? The largest being almost 150,000 square feet. So if you put a percentage on that, they're still going to be able to have, if it's 20%, 36,000 square feet of lawn, right? And so is just as a marker. Although the average is 6,500, right? And 25% of that is 20% of that is 1,300 square feet, which is still a fairly significant area of lawn. And so, part of me wants to lean towards what our neighbors are doing. A lot of folks who are building in Novato are also building here, or at least aware of those rules. And so that might make sense. So more to come on maybe the staff recommendation, unless there's any other comments from the board.
So we're looking at January 1st to activate the new limits. So that does give us this time to get it right, but it'd be good if we were, if we really do stick to having that information and being able to evaluate it and make a decision so that we are in good shape for January 1st.
Yeah, I mean, January 1st is sort of contingent on having adequate time to inform the cities and developers that are underway. So that's probably predicated getting this done in the next month or so. So I think from this discussion, staff can come back. I think we need to talk about, are we coming back with the ordinance and recommendation or some options? And we'll try and figure that out. I think kind of going out a little bit, what we may come back with something like for new development, an acreage or percentage, whichever's lesser. So you don't get a huge windfall necessarily on, if you happen to have a massive lot, still keeping it somewhat contained, but we'll be thinking about that and bringing that back.
All right, thank you. Moving on. So in addition to our local policies, there are some state policies that will impact water use moving forward. There's current rulemaking that's underway around the Making Conservation a California Way of Life. It was actually just approved on January 3rd. And so that means our urban water use objectives will start being rolled out and implemented as far as what is our outdoor residential water use allotment that the state is assigned to us, and what is our large landscape, large CII landscapes allotment as well. And so more to come on this as the state kind of determines what those water use objectives will ultimately be specific to Marin. The other rulemaking is the state water efficient landscape ordinance. So this is the ordinance that actually sets the 25% limit on turf. So we are anticipating this to be updated, although I don't see the turf limits shifting at this time. Another state policy being implemented is the non-functional turf ban. So you can see the rollout there starting in 2027 and then kind of finalizing with HOAs in 2029. One point I think is really important is that maintaining tree health as we talk about non-functional turf. We're going to be implementing the state requirement. We also have our local non-functional turf regulation. And as we implement incentives and motivate or promote conversion from turf grass to low water use landscaping, those trees are relying on a lot of that irrigation that the lawns have been getting. And so we don't want to have significant tree mortality as a result of our turf conversion programs. And so just kind of thinking that through and making sure that we're smart and thoughtful about how we roll this out will be important. And I know I've mentioned it before, but I know to me, it continues to be something we haven't quite grappled with completely. And so working on that.
Do you have any idea of what percentage of the water goes that way to the tree from the turf irrigation?
I don't. I mean, any tree though that's planted in turf grass is getting irrigated. It doesn't have its own irrigation
In
system,
the
so-
grass, but I'm talking ones on the side.
No, I don't.
Yeah, the ones in the grass are different, but
Adjacent. I don't
Yeah.
know. Our school education program. So we have a K through 12 program that's available to anyone in our any school district within our service area. We do classroom presentations. We have a school assembly, and we take 3rd and 5th graders out on the watershed. So this is all ran through our water efficiency team. And so just additional kind of opportunity for us to engage with our young customers, right? Kind of build that value of water efficiency as they as they grow up in our community. So we are looking at updating our water ed program. We're looking at our current content, talking to some environmental educators, all with the goal of aligning our program with the next generation science standards. I think it'll help motivate our teachers and schools to kind of re-engage with us in this revised program in a more meaningful way. So that's happening as well. Kind of getting close to the end here, guys. Hang in there. So advancing and evaluating our water efficiency program. So this is kind of some of our overarching kind of thoughts as we develop programs, right? So we want to have an emphasis on empowering our customers. And we see this with Flume, and we see this with AMI. We see it with our online estimator, where we want customers to go get online and kind of look and understand their water use on their own. And that we know that will drive them to increase their efficiency as well. As far as our pilot projects, we want to be able to complete the evaluation to determine if full scale really aligns with our program goals. And one example of that is our AMI pilots, right? So we are currently just finished installation of AMI on 300 high water users. And so kind of looking at that, not just doing the installation and walking away, but doing the evaluation and seeing, does it make sense? What kind of water savings are we seeing? What kind of engagement are we seeing? Are they getting on the platform? All of that good stuff. Each year, we want to conduct a residential end-use study that helps us understand fixture saturation and trends of water use within the community. We've done it the last couple of years, and we think that's important. We want to continue to leverage technology. These three bullets here seem very simple, yet they're not. We want customers to access their water use history online, right? Look at their own gallons per capita per day and do that calculation. We want to be able to allow them to apply for rebates electronically. No more mailing and paper, no more scanning, right? So we can do this, right? But it's all those kind of incremental ways to take away the barriers for customers for participating in our programs. And then obviously all that will help with our simplifying program participation tracking. Annually, we report on our activities. We've been doing this through our committee meetings. We'll continue to do this, but just recognizing, establishing milestones and kind of moving through those as far as report outs.
Could you back up a second? Are you talking post AMI, or are you talking using the 60-day delayed information in the current water bills?
On which item?
Let's take the first bullet point under Explore.
The emphasis on empowering customers.
Allowing customers to view their water use history.
Oh,
and
the Explore, got
calculate
it.
Their household GPCD.
All of them, right? So if we have a calculator where someone can say, we tell them, this is what we've estimated your landscape size to be. You can plug in how many people are in your household, and it pulls up their water use data without them having to, dig out their bill and understand what it means and find the CCFs right? So what are the tools that we can kind of develop to kind of help empower them to understand?
But it's 60 days at least offset.
Yeah.
So they can't really ask about July.
Right,
Most.
Exactly. Yes. Yeah. And maybe we start with our AMI customers. I mean, I think there's,
Okay,
how
that's
do
fair.
we,
That's a good idea.
technology is shifting all the time, so there
Sure.
may be other opportunities.
Sure.
All right, leveraging valuable collaboration. So working with others that are kind of in the same space to share our message and get the word out. It's great that we work with our communications team and they're able to push out some, Marin Climate Energy Partnership events, as well as they push out our events like our eco-friendly garden tour, which we saw a spike in participation when that happened. So just working with others to collaborate and share our messaging. All of this, though, is really with the thought to prioritize and encourage our outdoor water efficiency, right? That continues to be kind of the driving theme, even when we work with various partners. All right, so bringing it all home. So what's the impact of projected water savings on future water use, right? So if we're able to implement this master plan and achieve all of these levels of participation that we're projecting, we can look at our historic projected per capita water use. So the blue bars on the left start in 2010 and they go through 2023. And you can see the 21, 22, and 23, while there is a slight, I wouldn't even call it a rebound, blip, we're starting to see a little bit of an increase there, but nowhere near where we thought we would be after 3 years, right? By 2023, I had anticipated there would be at least a little bit more of a rebound that we would be seeing. And so when we use the 2020 as the baseline, which is what we've done on this slide, is using the baseline of 2020 and implementing the water efficiency master plan, that would reduce our gallons per capita per day by 14 out to 2045. This shows that we would essentially be retaining the water savings that we achieved during the drought out through 2045. And so this assumes, right, that we're going to see this this rebound fairly soon. So we wanted to look at this another way, which is what's the maximum projected water savings if we don't see a rebound, which is kind of what we're seeing over the last 3 years, right? Again, we're seeing that same 14 GPCD reduction, but it brings our 2045 gallons per capita per day district-wide. We're not talking just residential. We're talking the entire service area down to 88. This would imply that we would be able to save more going forward than what we actually reduced during the 2020-2021 drought. And so while we don't know kind of where in between these two brackets we're going to land, but we'll land somewhere in between, right? If we only knew that, right? I would be king. But we know that it's going to be somewhere in between theirs. And so we just wanted to kind of put these bookends here. The master plan does show the prior slide with the 2020 as our baseline. Because we don't know, right? That's where we landed. And so let me just hit the next steps and then we can answer questions. So this is a information item, recognizing that there are a number of action items embedded within the master plan that will be brought back to the board as they're developed and they're kind of vetted and ready for the board's formal adoption. And so this is a presentation to receive the plan. We'll continue implementing the plan, as I mentioned, return for any board actions. We'll launch our pilot projects that we've included here on the presentation. And of course, as I mentioned before, adaptively manage our water efficiency programs as new opportunities arrive. With that, happy to answer any additional questions.
Great. Thank you, Carrie. It's ambitious plan. Let's open it up for board discussion. Jed, do you want to start?
Yeah, Carrie, I want to thank you for putting in the effort here. I know it took a long time and you're making some commitments and some changes and some bold moves. I think it's important as you think about the next steps to report back in on how we're measuring the success of this effort and how it impacts our long-term water supply efforts. And my last comment is it would be great to get an update on your AMI implementation with the new program manager and the timeline. So we're ready to hear that when you are.
Thanks, Jed. Matt?
Carrie, thank you very much for the continued effort on this. And I concur, it's a pretty ambitious effort. It would be good to see what the state's conservation way of life in California goal is for Marin. You talked about it could be upcoming, but it'd be an interesting one to see what the state's driving for this, as well as what the state's identifying as what the standard should be for indoor water use per capita throughout, because I think it'd be good for everyone to see how we compare throughout the state and then how we're looking at meeting the state's goals. And I think there's a good chance we're already be far out exceeding them. And so understanding that we're already doing a great job would be good reinforcement for our customers. And the second one is, I think it is ambitious. And I think we do need to be realistic and looking at a lot of those numbers where you're trying to drive the cost. They're really good programs, drive the use of water down. They're really good programs. But when we look at the general manager's report month over month, we're seeing very low uptick on a lot of the big ticket items. The grass conversion or turf conversion has just dropped off dramatically. The actual gray water use is almost non-existent. So there's a few things that I want to make sure we're realistically looking at, as opposed to really trying to drive hard without a really solid plan to boost those numbers up. But the effort on this is much appreciated, and as conservation is be a very key component to our long-term water supply. Thank you.
Thanks, Matt. Monty?
I'll just reiterate much appreciation in this. This is just such an important effort, and I won't repeat comments, but one of the things that I think I believe you're correct in is that there are these often intangible or hard to quantify benefits of people participating in a program. They put in a gray water system, and then they take home a rainwater capture tank, and then they start noticing how much water they're using, and so there's more efficiencies. I don't know how in your industry, because you are the expert in this, how to track that, how to I know we want numbers, we want to be able to really we believe, I believe you that, and I think we all do, that these things do occur. But is there some way to quantify that, or are there even some case studies, some stories of our community members who did exactly that you could highlight for us that would bring that that assumption to life? I think that would really help us to see some of these programs that when we just look at the cost per yield, which is sometimes the place where we quickly go for good reason, it doesn't really capture the true larger benefit. And so I think finding some way to be able to understand that a little better would be helpful for us. Thanks.
Great. Thanks, Monty. Larry?
Well, it's difficult for me to say whether these are realistic or inspirational. But it's a great job, and it's very interesting information. The 14 gallons per capita per day comes up to about 2.7 million gallons a day. I know that Phil has been talking about 1 million gallons a day. So at 2.7, it's better than that, which is nice. We already exceed the state's request for our efficiency, as I recall, in GPCD. And it's good to see this effort, assuming these are realistic and not inspirational. So, we shall see. And thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks, Larry. I think there is that, now you're seeing a strong interest in monitoring, right? So really tracking our progress to understand, the likelihoods of hitting those targets that you've identified for 2045. And if we're not on that trajectory, how could we course correct to increase our chances of going there? But it's I would challenge other water districts to have I think as comprehensive and dedicated effort around water conservation. So I really hope that we all appreciate the ambition here, again, to use that word, and the level of detail that you've covered in your planning. I think we've spoken about, we've looked at, in the economic analysis, we've had discussions regarding the actual cost of conservation. And we've noted that based on one form of analysis, it may not be cheap if the major water supply benefit only accrues during periods of drought. But we've also noted that it's still essential to do for two perspectives. Achieving our water supply objectives are going to be based on a portfolio approach. It's not going to be one single effort that gets us there. It's going to be a combination of a lot of different efforts. This is integral for that. And it's one of the few actions that we can implement right now. And we are. And if the next drought begins this winter, our ability to conserve will be the main determinant of how well we're going to cope with that next drought. So thanks a lot, Carrie. Public comments, please. Thank you.
Yes, we do have a few. Phil Sauter, then Ed Jameson, and Larry Minikis.
Thank you for a detailed and very thoughtful presentation. One broad comment is that the goal of 4,000 acre feet of savings still doesn't happen until 2045 or more than 2 decades from now. I think I'll have to agree on the likelihood of at least one major drought between now and 2045, and that it would be good if we could speed that up, as you've already allowed for a greater opportunity there. I think there may be another way to look at the data and come at it from the direction of how much outdoor potable water we can reasonably support, given that we have finite resources. Like most families do when planning their budgets, we could look at our water supply as it exists and see how much potable water we need for basic indoor use, and then see how much we have left over for use on leaks and landscapes. We know that in 2023, single and multi-family residential customers used 14,000 acre feet of water. Of that amount, 8,400 acre feet was used outdoors. If we didn't need to fill that need with treated potable water from our reservoirs, our total water demand would be only 11,500 acre feet annually instead of 20,000. And that means our current 2-year supply, I think, would increase to over 3 years. So the good news is that conservation of potable outdoor water use all by itself could give us an extra year to respond to a drought. With 80,000 acre feet of existing storage, we may already have enough water to support all of our indoor requirements, most commercial requirements, and our environmental release requirements for nearly a 4-year period. I think we can acknowledge that our search for additional water supply, whether it's by flooding ranches or installing a desal plant or other costly projects, is not to supply indoor water, but rather to continue using large amounts of potable water on outdoor landscaping. I heard a story about a customer with a $12,000 water bill, and I used the rate calculator to learn that he'd have to use 6,000 gallons a day to get a bill like that. I'd like to draw attention to the majority of the district's customers who may not want to give up their land or drink lower quality water or pay increasing rates to support that level of usage for a relative few. Going forward, I hope we'll hear more about customer segmentation in our conservation efforts. In the flume data included in the master plan, it looked like outdoor water use was 91 gallons per household per day, which I think would translate to 6,000 acre feet annually if all customers behaved like these did. And that's well below the 8,400 acre feet of outdoor water we're currently using. So I think we've got a very encouraging signal from these folks, and it would be nice to replicate it across the entire customer base. I also would like to pick up on Director Sansom's comments about the detailed home visits. I had the Marin Fire Safety Inspector come by, and we spent a good half hour, and he had 22 good ideas. So I think that water is as important as fire. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Ed Jamison, then Larry Minikis.
Yes, thanks. First, this was a really excellent presentation by Ms. Pollard. The district has a top-notch conservation program, largely reflecting Carrie's excellent leadership and advocacy over the years. And I'd like to thank her for her consistent patience in educating me about the costs of the programs. Carrie is on top of the details, and I really appreciate that. On tonight's presentation, slides 7 through 18 covered the various programs, including each program's mostly tiny acre-foot water savings. But the slides did not show the acre-foot costs. Acre-foot costs have been shown in past presentations. Future presentations need to show acre-foot costs, including both the district's costs and participants' costs, including maintenance, to ensure that programs will be cost-effective. Like Director Smith, I installed a flume device in July of 2021. Fascinated, I collected lots of data, put them in a spreadsheet, and monitored it, but I've saved no water with flume. Its estimated acre-foot cost is okay, but near-term AMI implementation will undermine that. On turf limitations, I believe a 10 to 15% of lot area limitation may make sense for new construction, lower than the state's 25%. Remodels should not have such a limitation. And finally, purple pipe is absurdly costly, but some of these water efficiency programs' acre-foot costs make purple pipe look really cheap by comparison. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Larry Minikis and then Marilyn Price.
Carrie, and I'd like to also thank you for the very detailed presentation this evening. A couple of points are we need metrics in place to be able to measure success, perhaps on a quarterly basis, so that the public and the board can look at this to see how the programs are proceeding, rather than come back every so often, so that you have a regular way of looking at this that we can measure. The second thing is we're looking at municipal customers, we're looking at residential, and we're looking at high water users. But within those high water users, there's no discussion, and I brought this up recently, on commercial use in ways that we can reduce the use of restaurants and other high water users in Marin, which probably account for a fairly decent amount of the water that is being used by our customers. And I'm wondering why we're not seeing more here on the commercial end of things. With that, thank you so much.
Thank you. Miss Marilyn Price?
Well, yeah, thank you for letting me speak again. And Carrie, that was a most wonderful presentation. I just thought you are doing a terrific job. I'm wondering actually if more money needs to be put into helping Carrie. I'm sure you have a limited staff. There's a lot that she is doing and that you all are doing. But I'm wondering if with more money being put into Help for Carrie and this water efficiency type project that we could do better than we have. I think we definitely could do better. I also wonder, I saw your partnerships. That was really nice to know. There's probably more that our environmental community could do to help you. I'd like to try to look into that we can add more groups to your list and have that added help from our environmental groups to get the word out about these types of projects. And I also, today I heard on the news and I looked it up and sure enough, it has happened that Governor Newsom is proposing that this has to do with fire, but that, that everybody in fire-prone areas are going to have to clear brush and vegetation from 5 feet from their house. If you remember, that was proposed for, I know it was proposed for Mill Valley, and there was just an absolute uproar. Oh, we can't do that. And that is the problem. I think my opinion is we definitely need more regulations. Nobody should be using that 16,000 gallons that Phil reported. It just should not be permitted. So as we advance into the future and the future of our kids who are going to grow up in a different kind of a world, that we really think whatever we can do, that there are more requirements. People don't do it on their own. They've got to be hit in their pocketbook and they've got to be hit because they have to. So, and we have to get more word out so that those that are willing to do something will. So those are my points.
Thank you, Ms. Price. Next is Wendy Callens. Go ahead, Ms. Callens.
Yes, hi, thank you. Again, I want to just echo the other remarks. Carrie's done an incredible job. And this is Wendy Callens with Sustainable Marin. And like Marilyn, we really want to see how we can help out. We are in collaboration with a number of the different climate organizations. We have coming up in the fall our Green Home Tour. A lot of that is set already, but it's not completed. And I think would be a wonderful opportunity to reach out to the people who attend that to find out more about what MMWD has to offer. We're also exploring with Carrie the possibility of what we can do to encourage the cities and the towns to get more involved. One of the easiest things we can do is getting them to put something in their newsletters on a regular basis so that whenever their newsletter goes out, there's always something about what you're offering in the way of water conservation. I think there are numerous ways in which we can try and reach people, and we in the nonprofit world are here to help. So thank you.
Thank you. There are no further speakers.
Thank you for all the input. Carrie, maybe at some point it would be good to hear about, consumption by the big commercial users and the degree, what that contributes to our overall demand. Maybe
Great
for a
committee
few,
topic.
great committee topic. Agreed. Thank you, Carrie.
Thank you.
And now we have item 9B, which is review and approval of increases to certain watershed fines and bail amounts. Welcome, Sean. Don.
Good evening, directors. Sean Horn. I'm Director of Watershed Resources. I'm joined with Chief Wick.
Don Wick, Chief Ranger.
the item before you is a request for review and approval of increasing certain watershed fines. We reviewed this item with the Finance Committee on June 26th and took input that we received from the group and made some refinements to the fee structure that we're bringing forth to you today. I think the critical piece to start this out with is we did our last comprehensive update to the fine structure in 2017. So 7 years ago, so it's quite a while ago. And the fine structure is a really key tool for helping our rangers successfully do their job on the watershed, not just to protect the watershed from the collective impact that visitors can have, but also to ensure the stewardship of the natural resources and the biodiversity of the watershed. In addition, we wanted to note that as part of our long-term watershed recreation planning and feasibility study, we're making suggestions in the fine increases to really support some of those incremental steps that we're taking as part of that planning process in terms of looking at access improvements that we might be doing under our pilot programs or our trial periods. So some of this is supporting of those efforts that you're going to be reviewing in a month or two. And then I wanted to note also, before we get started with the presentation, that the fines that we're bringing forth, there's tiered structures for some, and those were targeted based on what we've seen the most citations written for over the past 3 or 4 years. So our rangers did a bit of an analysis looking at kind of what needed to be targeted to ensure that we had compliance with those regulations. And I just want to emphasize that as I hand the presentation over to Chief Wick, that the updates we're suggesting here are really in alignment with other agencies that we've looked at, and specifically with our partners at Marin County Parks and Open Space District. So with that, I'm going to hand it to Don Wick to walk us through the various fines and fees that we're requesting an update on.
All right, thanks, Sean. So one of the things that we looked at was, first, at this slide here, I don't know if it's not up there. Oh. But just a refresher, the board as a whole has the ability to make infractions and misdemeanors in regards to regulations on the watershed. And the type of fine or the type of offense there indicated by the I is infraction. Infractions are viewed as less than a crime offense. The misdemeanors are a crime, and they can have a fine amount up to $1,000 and a year in jail. Infractions, you don't have a right to an attorney or to a jury trial, so they're handled differently than that. Those are the only two types of crimes that we have on our books as regulations. We don't have felonies. You guys don't have the ability to do that. So walking through this, we're increasing the fines for closed lands from 35 to 50. 35 is kind of our standard, or was our standard fine for most of our offenses. The reason that we're asking to increase that is in preparation of the recreation plan. Trying to keep people, if we're going to open up paths for some users, we don't want them going into closed land areas. This is a deterrent. And I want to remind you that rangers are out here to educate first, and then we use citations as a reminder not to do that. And so it's a progression for us also. We don't just go out and just start writing people. Closed areas, different than closed lands. Same thing, we want to increase the fine there from 35 to 50. And then the swimming, boating, and camping. Those are things that we see not a lot of, but we do see it. And the $35, in our opinion, is not deterring anybody. So we're trying to increase that up there to capture that. Water supply.
So sorry, Don, could you just remind us the difference between closed land and closed area?
Sure. So closed area may be because of a vegetation matter or some habitat there that we're trying to protect, as opposed to an entire area that we're trying to close off. Water supply. These are things that are unique to the water district: biological, water, wildlife, geological, architectural, and cultural. These are all things that we're trying to protect on the land. And so the $35 fine for those was a bit understated, in our opinion. $100 fine is more to the point of trying to protect what we have up there. And we don't see a lot of it, but we do see some. We have people that go up there and scavenge Some of the historical resources, the plane crashes, we still have people to go look for that stuff. We have people to come up and collect mushrooms or different types of plants. And so we're trying to protect all that. The on-trail, these are for bicycles. If they're riding on a trail that's not designated for bicycles, we want to keep the offense down low. Again, we're trying to educate the users, but we do see repeat offenders on this, and they're just not, some of them just don't care. So we're trying to capture it in a second and third offense, so that if we do catch them a second time, it's a significant increase. Third time, it'll go up a little bit more. So we're just trying to make this an actual deterrent rather than a fee for doing, something that they're not supposed to be doing.
And Don, I just want to confirm here. So I'm seeing an increase on the first offense in the base fine of 35 to 50. On the second offense, it's from 185 now to 200.
Yes.
And we're not proposing any change to the third or additional offense.
Third is an addition. We only had a first and second offense before.
Okay. I see.
And the same with the speed limit. First offense, we're trying to move that up to 50, and then we added the second and third offenses to those. Those are important for our slow and say hello zones, as well as the regular or general areas on the watershed. Dog off leash, $35. We're increasing that up to 50. We didn't have a second and third offense on that, but we certainly had people that were multiple offenders, and this was not a deterrent at 35. And we're hoping it'll be a deterrent at 50. And if they still don't get it, then we start hitting them with a higher fine and try to get them to get in line with what's going on up there. And then dogs allowed to swim. Again, this is a protection of the water, so we're increasing that from 35 to 50. We do see some of that from time to time. And then horse on trail, these increases for the horse or equestrians is bringing it in line with the rest of the users for bicyclists and pedestrians.
So those are the updates that we're proposing tonight. And then I just want to acknowledge that there's some additional updates that we discussed at the Finance Committee that would be new ordinances. And we're suggesting that we bring those forward as we start to talk about the pilot programs, which they would support. So specifically around the e-bike regulations. And then we did have some updates to dam and spillway regulation 9.08, and also adding a drone permit requirement under 9.02. And so we're hoping to bring these forth as we continue to have the discussion around recreation. And I do want to acknowledge, right, the vast majority of the people visiting the watershed are complying with all of the district rules and regulations. The fine structures really only apply if you're not following the district's rules and regulations. And we have set them uniformly for all the visitors in a way that we feel is consistent, not just with the regulations we have on the book, but other agencies, and are trying to create that tiered structure to deter those activities that are impactful over time to the watershed and to other visitors. So with that, we'll take any questions that you may have, and just acknowledge that, this is a critical step in our planning process, and it's something we discussed through our recreation management planning feasibility process as a way to help the district's rangers do their jobs successfully and help the district manage its watershed. So with that, we'll take any questions you have.
Thank you, Sean. Don, thanks a lot. Monty, I know you have a hard stop at 8:15. So do you want to start the discussion?
Sure. Thank you for coming back with some changes that are responsive to the comments that we gave. So thank you for doing that. I think that, again, we're not here, we're not trying to balance our budget here off of fines. We just want to encourage people who need encouragement via fines to come to the watershed and respect it as a resource that we all share. I think that these fines look, they look good. And, I think that there is a concern of, that I know that for cyclists that there's a greater emphasis on and then a higher increase in additional fees, and that looks targeted. I don't know to what extent we see, repeat offenders in, the equestrian community. I don't know the numbers. If there was, if you thought that there was a need for, that there's repeat offenders there in that use group that need additional higher fees for second and even third offenses, if that's warranted, I'd love to hear that. If so, we should, let's treat all using groups, in a commensurate way, where if that's what's necessary to encourage, again, people to participate in our watershed in a responsible manner, then let's do that. But otherwise, I think these, the other fees that are $35, I don't know why we don't just make them all 50 if they haven't been updated. But I don't, that's a change that may not even, I don't, if we're talking about one ticket a year or two a year or something, it's not really that warranted, or that much of an issue. Then not everything needs to be addressed right now. I don't want to hold this up because I know this is an important issue.
If I may, but the equestrian question you had, we don't see a lot of offense by the equestrians, honestly. We certainly don't see a lot of repeat offenders at all. And that's why we didn't address that in this.
Okay, I appreciate that. I know there's just out of sheer numbers, there are far more mountain bike users.
Right.
So just by sheer number, you're going to have that effect.
And I'll just add that looking over the numbers over the last couple of years for citations, the $35 fine ones are ones that are very rarely used, one citation a year type of thing.
Okay.
So.
Great. Thanks, Monty. Larry?
I'm a little confused that there's not something about red flag. Is that by nature of the closed?
Specifically for red flags?
Yeah. Violation of that.
Yeah. Something we could visit. We've looked at fires. We increased that fine, as you know, for smoking and for fires on the watershed. I don't know that any agency around us has anything specifically for red flag either, but that doesn't mean we can't. The one way we would address that, in all honesty, is closed area, because we do close it during.
Yeah,
the
I mean,
red flag.
I didn't know if that is what this means.
Yeah, kind of. But as you know, the watershed is very porous. So the only people that we're really stopping coming up there's vehicles or which are sources of heat, but that doesn't stop bicyclists, horses, or pedestrians or hikers coming up there. We just don't have the manpower to do that.
Do those also cover night usage of the watershed? Is that
Closed area? Yeah.
Closed area.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I think these look fine. I'm a little concerned about the third and additional ones. I wonder if we need something a little more draconian after that.
Well, I would approach it with this way. I'd say give this a chance. And if we see a problem, we can certainly address it at a later date. I'm hoping that this will deter it and we won't get to that point.
And do these, like the dog catcher ones, go on to the DMV or something?
No.
Okay.
No, these are not those type of offenses.
So what happens if you don't pay?
The courts will reach out and they can fine you a heavier fine for not paying it. It would go into collection. So there's ways to get money out of it.
Okay, thanks.
Thanks, Larry. Matt?
Yep. Thank you, Sean, and the staff for taking another look at this and reviewing them. A quick clarification question before I keep going. In the general manager's report under watershed protection, there's two categories of stats he usually gives us: the incidents and events, and then citations. Can you explain the difference between the two?
Between incidents and citations?
Or incidents and events, and then citations. Yeah.
Well, citations are specific to when we actually cite somebody. Incidents could be anything. It could be assisting a visitor up there. It could be a call for service that doesn't warrant anything or anyone to be cited. So it's kind of a catch-all more than this.
Okay, but if we see like dog off leash on that, it's just either someone reports it or it's a warning. Is that?
Yes, correct. Because a lot of times we'll get a report of a dog off leash, and by the time ranger gets there, either they're gone or they put the dog on leash. So we don't always the crime that somebody else is reporting.
No, understood. That's helpful. Thank you. So looking at this across the board, we're mainly increasing the fines just by $15 outside of what would be camping, and then also the protection of specific assets on the watershed itself, the geological resources, wildlife, et cetera. So it looks like a pretty consistent across the board increase. The big change would be adding the second and third steps for some of these items. And you guys have already done a good job of explaining why you would want to do that. For, I think with this big change, two things I'd like to recommend. One would be making sure we post these potentially and let the public know that, you know, fair warning, when you enter on here, if you're going to be breaking the rules, this is what's going to cost, and make sure it's out there. And then the second would be is we move down the road, you know, more regular review of these fines as opposed to the 7 years that we're at right now, maybe a 5-year cycle, something that allows us not to get too far behind on what we're trying to do. But they look good to me. Thank you.
Thanks, Matt. Jed?
Yeah, just some specific questions that have come through the community that I'd love your guys' feedback on. One is that it looks like driving a vehicle in a prohibited area on the watershed has a smaller fine than possessing a bike on the trail. Can you help explain why we would fine driving a car in a prohibited area less than a bike?
Well,
Is
it's not been a problem up there. Most of our where they would be caught driving in a prohibited area is gated usually. So we don't see a lot of it. We see a lot more bikes on trails than we do anything that has to do with a vehicle.
Might as well just make it commensurate then, right? Just if it happens, just kind of looks like you're just penalizing the bikers. So if we have a fine for driving a vehicle, make it the same, right?
I would say that I would just reflect the last time I heard of a vehicle being on the watershed was a woman who got lost and accidentally drove through a gate and didn't speak English and didn't have a way of identifying the signage to get back out. And so I think for those examples, should we cite someone like that for the same offense as a, you know, chosen offense to poach a trail or something? Doesn't seem balanced. When you look at the other agencies and how they develop their fine structures for things that they don't see happen or occur very often, it's a very low fine in case they have to use it. So just trying to be consistent with other agencies, we've left them that way.
That to me, that's a inconsistency that doesn't totally make sense. I mean, maybe it doesn't happen, but seems like a problem if it were. Is there any reason, and maybe it's your answer is going to be the same, if there are multiple offenses for bicycles that increase, but we don't have multiple offense increases for the other areas, why not? Why not just have them increase the same amount?
What other areas are you talking about?
Dog off leash, polluting the water supply.
So dog off leash does
hunting and trapping issues. Maybe people have firearms or weapons or fireworks on the watershed. Why wouldn't we have increased?
The reason that we did the 2 or 3 step is because those are the offenses that we're seeing most repeated. And so we're trying to deter that. Well, we're not seeing a lot of firearms up there. We're not seeing a lot of repeat offenders for any of the ones that you mentioned. So we're trying to keep it kind of reasonable, to be honest.
Why not do it?
Well, we could do it for every crime that we have up there.
Then it wouldn't seem like you're just solely penalizing bikers, right? If someone comes with a firearm twice, I imagine you'd want to increase the fine significantly the second time, or shooting off fireworks or
First of
smoking
all,
watershed.
they bring a firearm up there, it's a misdemeanor. So it's a different crime category.
Right. Or defecating in the, in the reservoirs.
Well,
We don't increase
I
it
get what
twice.
you're saying, but again, we're not seeing a lot of repeat offenses on the things that you're talking about. We do.
I'd suggest you
we do
think
on-
about it. And maybe I won't vote no on this, but why not just make it the same increases? Right? It just seems like a penalty as opposed to being a thoughtful way to balance it for everyone. That's my only comments.
Okay, we appreciate the input. We'll take that into consideration when we do more frequent updates to our fine structures in the future. So with that, any final questions? Otherwise, this is a request for the board to approve the updated fine structure. And this is something that we would submit to the county through their bail update and review process, and it would go into effect on the 1st of January, 2025.
Yep. Sean, I think, as you know, there's been a lot of attention on the differences between the way we're approaching bike-related offenses versus others. I think you've done a good job of explaining why that is. It's not that complicated. It's the main issue we're trying to deal with here. And it's tied to the changes that we're making with respect to trail access. And you're also responding to board requests very specifically to increase the penalties for illegal bike use. That was something that you've heard multiple times. So I hope everybody appreciates the motivations for doing this. Let's open it up for public comment. I'm sure there is going to be some.
Yes, we have about 4 so far. Joby, Tapia, and then Jamie's iPhone.
Good evening, board. I'd like to submit parts of a letter that I sent in to a few of you and add some comments to it. I wanted to thank you, first of all, for your time and efforts that had been to revise the recreational plan to include potential usage of bikes on the watershed land. As a 25-year resident of Mill Valley and a lifelong cyclist, these changes are both positive and very welcome. However, many of us have endeavored over the years to be good stewards of the land, as well as ambassadors for our sport by keeping good relations with other users. While uniquely mischaracterized by a vocal few, we have kept good spirits to be constructive stakeholders in commenting and planning so that the watershed can be enjoyed by all equally. There's no equal at the moment. With this said, I'm beyond disappointed to see proposed changes for the fine schedule for non-conforming use by cyclists. These are grossly out of line with violations of every other user group by a factor of 2 to 3 times. For instance, a dog off leash, a third offense, only rises by 50% over the base fee. From 205 to 305, while non-conforming use by cyclists rises over 400% from the base bail. Conversely, fines for unauthorized use by equestrians are a static 205 per offense, no matter. So the first offense is 205, the 15th offense is 205. There's no equanimity here. So this exaggerated singling out of a specific user group is extremely biased and over-aggressive use of the stick where a carrot was previously dangled with expanded access. There has yet been any pilot program rolled out to measure the compliance with expanded access, and the board is being asked to further penalize people who just want the smallest of consideration with increased access that other users currently enjoy, which will have the effect of much of the goodwill that has been built with the cycling community to be lost with this excessive fine policy that is being considered before the pilot program has even had a chance to be started and reviewed. If water safety is so paramount, then why are the fines for disrupting and polluting and impeding are so laughably small? Those fines should be higher and more criminalized. We're talking about the water, which is what we're trying to protect. All of us, we all want the watershed to be protected. And they don't increase with successive violations. People are only wanting to recreate, not overtake. If the needs for enforcement and punishment are so critical, this suggests that there's an imbalance between user wants and needs versus arbitrary restrictions. Just like the Greywater program, the findings were that requirements were not as effective as incentives. So what is the board doing to provide incentives to the cycling community instead of punitive measures? What could be done with the resources that are being used for over-enforcement if redirected into conservation and education? This proposed fee structure comes across as bad faith. I humbly request that the board considers and vetoes this proposal and instead considers alternative measures that will productively meet the goals of both expanded access and overall compliance. The carrot always works better.
Jamie's iPhone, then Larry Minigan. I'm sorry, I wasn't on mute, or I was on mute. May I please have Jamie's iPhone and then Larry Minikis? Okay, let's move on to Larry Minikis, please.
Well, there's always, instead of getting into the weeds about the various fines and such, it's hard to understand why anyone would be against fining people for doing things they shouldn't be doing on the watershed. But what I want to say is what will be important here is there's always going to be cases where the rangers are going to want to give a warning. But at the same time, there should be more encouragement, especially with regular users that know better and should know better, to give them a fine. I think sometimes we can be a little bit too much on the side of just education, and we need to be a little bit more on setting an example that others will then hear about and follow, because the best way you get compliance is word gets out there that the rangers are actually doing their job out there. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Jamie's iPhone, please.
Sorry, I was on mute earlier. Hopefully you can hear me now.
Yes.
I'd just like to express my concern over the water board considering raising fines, specifically on bicycle trail use on unauthorized trails. I think there's already penalties in place for unauthorized use like this, and those penalties deter people that can be deterred by that type of tactic. I also just feel these penalties are really out of step with the nature of the offense. I don't think other fines are typically applied in a way that the more people do them, the more it's seen to be done, the higher the fine gets. I think that's also out of step with the way that things are normally done in law enforcement. My final concern really it's not isolated to just the disproportionate amount of the fine, but the cost associated with, enforcing these things. I'm concerned with the wasted time and the resources that continue to be devoted to developing proposals like this, implementing them, enforcing them. The enforcement approach doesn't seem like it's worked. It seems like it's been a failure to me for 30 years or more. I don't see any observable success. I think it's, reminiscent of the war on drugs campaign, back from a similar era. Programs that don't work for decades are rarely ever fixed with money or enforcement. I think the board should use the time and resources they have to develop programs and policies that are innovative and have a chance to make meaningful change for the watershed, people that recreate in the watershed inhabitants, like, wildlife. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Andy and Jen Levine, then Ann Thomas.
Hi there, this is Andrew Levine. Appreciate the opportunity to talk on this. And, I think a lot of us are going to say the same things, but really, first of all, fines for bikes on trails is not an effective watershed management tool, but that's not really the big deal. The big deal is how cyclists continue to be treated as second-class citizens. The fines are not the same for everybody because they escalate for bikes. And it's fine to say bikes might violate these rules more often, but the rules should be the same. The message you're sending is that this is a problem that we need to solve. And I think we tried to solve that problem through the recreation management process. And really hitting it with higher fines isn't going to work. But if you're going to do it, at least send the message that the important things like water quality or people's safety on the watershed or dealing with damage to sensitive plants and animals are at least as high on your list of issues as going after those darn cyclists. So I think it sends a message, even if those fines don't need to be instituted. So I would appreciate your taking a look back at that and thinking about what you're telling people and how you're propagating this institutional anti-cycling attitude, even though you've done lots of good work to make that end. So thank you for letting me speak.
Thank you. Miss Ann Thomas, please.
Oh, hi. Can you hear me?
Yes.
It's sort of an unrelated comment. Oh, I think the fine increases are just great. I'm all for it. And I have probably a slightly unrelated question, which I know you have fines or you don't allow smoking campfires, barbecues on the watershed. What about vaping? When you say smoking, do you also not allow vaping? Or is that just understood? Hello?
Sure. Don, if you want to respond to that one.
We classify it as smoking also, although it's not considered the same as a flame in the sense of a cigarette is, but we do try to persuade or dissuade any sort of smoking up there, whether it's vaping or cigarettes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. There are no further speakers.
Okay, I think we've had a lot of good input. I think we also know that these are things that we can come back to modify on a regular basis as we understand what's working and what's not working. So I really would like to move this forward. So I'll ask for a motion to approve the proposed increases to watershed fines and bail amounts.
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Do we have a roll call vote, please?
Can I
Eric?
just make a really quick interjection just to make sure that we're focused on, there was a revised resolution provided. So I just want to make sure the board understands that the revised resolution that was provided earlier today is the one that we want to move. That one has clarity about the effective date, and it's an updated schedule that was attached. So hopefully everybody has that revised in front of them.
I was only looking at the revised presentation that we received
Today, correct?
today.
Yeah, that's the one.
Okay,
Yes.
that also had
Yes.
the revised resolution
Yes,
in Terry's email.
there was a link to the resolution.
Okay.
It's still the same.
Oh,
Okay, I feel
Okay,
comfortable.
So it just clarifies that the effective date is not until January 1st, 2025, and then it took out spillways and dams, which we have yet to adopt an ordinance for, so it's not in the fine schedule. Otherwise, it's
Yes,
the same. Okay.
that's understood. Okay,
Thank you.
thank you, Molly. All right, so we can go ahead with the roll call vote then, Terry.
Yes, Director Russell,
Aye.
Director Schmidt,
Aye.
Director Smith,
Molly, can I make a caveat or an additional request? I am supportive, but I'd like to make a comment if I can.
Sure.
I'd like to suggest, Sean, that my request to look at treating other fines similar to the way we're treating bikes is taken seriously and not just like, we'll consider it. I don't see any reason why you wouldn't increase fines for other infractions, regardless of how common they have been. I understand the importance of doing what we're doing, but I hope you take that seriously so that we look at across the board what we're doing. And secondly, I'd like to see the measurement of the impact of this new change over time to see how effective it is. I am supportive. Aye.
I'd be supportive of that too.
Vice President Sampson
Aye.
and President Kush.
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks again, Sean. Done. And we'll move on to our next agenda item, which is future board and committee meetings
Yes.
and upcoming agenda items.
Yes, I just wanted to announce that we're having an operations committee meeting this Friday. We're going to be discussing the update on renewable energy opportunities. Then we'll come back in August 6th and at 5:30. That because there's going to be a closed session. So 5:30 p.m. August 6th. And one of the key regular items to discuss that day is the grant update. Then August 16th, we'll have another operations committee meeting. And then we'll have one of the items that will be discussed is the update on the costs of water supply roadmap projects. For external meetings, it's been canceled, the North Bay Watershed Association board meeting. And on August 5th is the Sonoma WACTAC meeting. And that's all I have.
Thanks, Terry. Any board member requests for agenda items to be included in future meetings?
Ranjiv, I'll start off, and I think with the next steps on the prior item, adding e-bike regulations and those other ones that are going to require ordinance, I think is a good opportunity to continually look at these fines and move them forward, but also then at some point sooner than later, take a look holistically at everything we're doing, but not let it detract from the initial request of really hone in on the impacts from the recreation management plan and the new things we're doing, but follow up shortly, as was cited earlier, to make sure that we're having a holistic look at everything.
So Matt, basically, confirming this request that we review the impacts of both the trail access program, the new fine structure, as well as consider Jed's request for looking at more consistency across the different categories.
Yeah, I would focus on that latter there. And because I think the former is going to be a little bit more of a long-term process. What we'd like to do is not take away from the momentum staff's already moving forward with the e-bike piece and the additional ones that were mentioned in Sean's presentation. But once those move forward, then we have an opportunity, I think, sooner rather than later, looking at holistically all of our fines across the watershed.
Okay, so yeah, so you clarified the timing of that. I think it'd be good if we could have a second just to confirm that.
I'll second that.
Thanks, Monty. Anything else?
I'm good.
Okay, then I think we're ready to adjourn. The Marin Water Board of Directors meeting of July 16, 2024 is officially adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks.